welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For over 150 years, ours has been a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, and your hopes are welcome here. We are connected across time and space, and this sanctuary is filled with your love and spirit. Our doors are closed because our hearts are open, and we are living our values of care and compassion. Today, we are glad to welcome guest preacher, the Reverend Victoria Safford, lead minister at White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church at Matamidi, Minnesota, just north of St. Paul. She and Reverend Luke served that church together, and she was scheduled to preach here in late March, which of course didn't happen. We're grateful for her joining our service today. And a special thanks to David Townsend for supplying some of the music for this service, along with our co-directors of music. As always, stay up to date through your e-news and contact any of our staff to get connected with groups or for spiritual, emotional, or material support through this time. Our church and our hearts are open. Every Sunday, our collection goes to support people within or beyond our church. Today's collection is shared, half to support the church and half to support emergency financial assistance for members and friends through our Human Needs Fund, which has been increasingly needed in these months. Please give at the link listed with the service, and thank you for your generosity. In the words of Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the Church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the Church of the Open Mind. This is the Church of the Loving Heart, where friends come together and share.
The other day, I was reading a Facebook posting asking if others were feeling this strange disconnect between being in environments where the pandemic is treated as a real threat and the increasing number of situations where people are living their lives much as it was before, even vocalizing rather strongly their beliefs that the caution is overblown. Part of me gets that. It's hard work to stay vigilant when the threat is invisible and change is hard. And it can be hard to balance the needs of society with personal needs. For many, I think the threats of climate change or social justice, inequality are equally hard to personalize and therefore maybe easier to ignore. I admit I'm going to work at home instead of the office, but many of my day-to-day activities are largely the same, which feels comfortable. With the recent protests, I've been trying to do more reading, learning, and reflecting. I saw a clip from The Daily Show where a group was discussing what dismantling police might actually mean. One of the women spoke about reimagining what we would want to support in our communities if we were to start fresh. Is our current police system what we would build? Or might we want to spread out many of these duties to other professionals that have more background in mental illness or homelessness? The riots, while causing serious destruction, also brought neighbors closer together. And wouldn't we want that? I feel like we have an opportunity on so many fronts to reimagine what we would like our world, our communities to look like. It's scary and exciting at the same time. Although these words from the Reverend Lynn Unger were written in response to the pandemic, I think they're a good reminder in general as we face the challenges that are surrounding us today. At least they speak to me. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move, invisibly, where we cannot touch.
Hi friends, here I am sitting outside the church. It's a beautiful day. I'm so excited to be able to be out here and checking out all the beautiful flowers on the hillside and just listening to the breeze and the birds. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about how different everything has been lately. I mean, kind of a different end of the church year and the school year, and how things will be different this summer. And I've also been thinking about all of the protests and everything going on that are lifting up differences between people. And sometimes different can be good and sometimes different can be scary. But the most important thing to remember is it's okay to be different. It's okay, because if everybody was the same, well, I don't know, that'd probably be kind of boring. So here's our story for today. It's Okay to Be Different by Todd Parr. It's okay to be missing a tooth, or maybe even 2 or 3. It's okay to need some help sometimes, or all the time. It's okay to have a different nose, long, short, or in between. It's okay to be a different color. It's okay to have no hair. It's okay to have big ears. It's okay to have wheels. It's okay to be small, medium, large, or extra large. It's okay to wear glasses. It's okay to talk about your feelings, even if you don't have actual words. It's okay to eat macaroni and cheese in the bathtub. Is it really? Might want to check on that one. It's okay to say no to things you aren't sure of. It's okay to come from a different place. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to come in last. It's okay to dance by yourself. It's okay to have a pet worm. It's okay to be proud of yourself. It's okay to have different moms, or 2 moms, or 2 dads, or different dads. It's okay to be adopted. It's okay to have an invisible friend. It's okay to do something nice for someone. It's okay to lose your mittens. It's okay to get mad. It's okay to do something nice for yourself. It's okay to help a squirrel collect nuts. It's okay to have different kinds of friends. It's okay to make a wish. It's okay to be different. You are special and important just because of being who you are. Love, Todd. Isn't it fun to have all of these differences that make us each unique in our own way? I mean, regardless of skin color or religion or hairstyle or glasses, all of these things are what bring uniqueness to the world. And I think that is what makes the world a better place.
We are in different places, but we are still together, and we gather in a virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. We are enriched by the presence of each other and are drawn closer to the heart of love in this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, our arms embracing. We honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Barbara Anderson, serving as our caring coordinator for this 2 weeks, arranging care for our members and friends in need. As we continue through this time of staying at home, many of us may need additional care, whether it be pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run, and we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have offered to assist members with these requests, and we send gratitude to you all for serving our congregation during this time. This morning's flowers are shared by Judy Jensen in memory of her sister, Maureen Haggart. And additional flowers are shared by Beth Plumhoff in celebration of her new granddaughter, who you'll hear about shortly. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We revel in those who are celebrating joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. We send healing strength to Jeannie Hendy today. Jeannie had a cardiac procedure on Thursday, which went well, and she will be recovering at home in Rochester. She is happy that her daughter Gwen and son Gareth are visiting to help. She welcomes uplifting encouragement through cards and well wishes. We hold in our hearts this morning Lucy and Mark Bond. Mark has experienced continued decline with Lewy body dementia, and after spending 3 weeks in the hospital, has moved to memory care at Cottagewood. As Lucy becomes used to a quieter home, she shares that she is grateful for her dogs who are keeping her company. We hold Lucy in our thoughts and send strength as they travel this road. Cards of support are welcome. And we celebrate with Beth Plumhoff the birth of her granddaughter, Lotus Pansy Plumhoff, who entered the world on June 4th. Will, Beth's son, and Greta, her daughter-in-law, and baby are doing well in Missoula, Montana, and the baby is beautiful and healthy with the cutest name in the world. Congratulations on this wonderful news. As we have over these last few months, we need to continue to reach out to all in our community to let them know we are still here and still holding them. We encourage you all to send cards and make calls to those you love and support local businesses, opening the doors of communication and community. May the faith and the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? Spirit of life, Spirit of love, may we be held in tenderness in these troubled days. May we be held and hold each other in tenderness. The times are troubled by sickness and soul sickness, and some days we are weary, some days we're discouraged, confounded and confused by so much sorrow, so much uncertainty and fear. May we hold each other gently. None of us is perfect. Each of us is trying to be braver than we really are and strong. May we be held and hold each other in strong and loving hearts, that each of us may shine the light we're called to shine in these unsettled times. Amen.
first reading is from Jabari Asim, a former editor of the Crisis magazine. The talk. It's more than time we had that talk about what to say and where to walk, how to act and how to strive, how to be upright and stay alive, how to live and how to learn, how to dig and be dug in return, when to concede and when to risk, how to handle, stop and frisk. Keep your hands where they can see and don't reach for your ID until they request it quite clearly. Speak politely and answer sincerely. The law varies according to where you are, whether you're traveling by foot or driving a car. It won't help to be black and proud, nor will you be safer in a crowd. Keeping your speech calm and restrained, ask if, in fact, you're being detained. If the answer is no, you're free to go. If the answer is yes, remain unfazed to avoid being choked, shot, or tased. Give every cop your ear, but none your wit. Don't tempt him to fold, spindle, mutilate, hit, or otherwise cause pain to tendons, bones, muscle, brain. These are things you need to know if you want to safely come and go. But still, there is no guarantee that you will make it home to me. Despite all our care and labor, you might frighten a cop or a neighbor whose gun sends you to eternal sleep, proving life's unfair and talk is cheap. The second reading is from James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Most of us are about as eager to change as we were to be born, and go through our changes in a similar state of shock. Any real change implies the breakup of the world as one has always known it, the loss of all that gave one an identity, the end of safety. And at such a moment, unable to see and not daring to imagine what the future will now bring forth, one clings to what one knew or dreamed that one possessed. Yet, it is only when we are able, without bitterness or self-pity, to surrender a dream we have long cherished or a privilege we have long possessed that we are set free. We have set ourselves free for higher dreams, for greater privileges. One must say yes to life and embrace it wherever it is found. And it is found in terrible places, for nothing is fixed forever and forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing, the sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out.
I wonder sometimes if we've become too pragmatic, too practical, empirical, methodical, logical, evidence-based. And by we, I mean Unitarian Universalists, we who have inherited this tradition of reasonable religion, which has always struck me as an oxymoron, a contradiction waiting to explode or implode, or otherwise prove impotent right when we need unflinching faith the most. What purpose could religion really serve if it has to pass the test of reason every time you need to mourn, for example? I mean, cry and cry your heart out, convulsed with grief and fury at everything, at God, as when someone whom you love has died. There's no room for reason there, no place for rational religion. Even months later, years later, when people around you are shaking their heads and saying, "You should be over that by now. You're not doing very well. The stages of grief say blah, blah, blah," but you're still broken-hearted, broken-spirited, just broken through and through. What purpose could religion really serve if it has to pass the test of reason every time you need to praise the day, for example, or give thanks out loud, delight in music, children, joy? You've seen the news. You know what's going on. It weighs on you like lead. But still the sun came up this morning and you were grateful and amazed and glad. You were laugh out loud delighted. And that just makes no sense at all under the circumstances, the weight of our shared circumstances. But there's no room for perfect reason here, even in the midst of struggle. Failure of gratitude, neglect of joy, that's blasphemy against the gift of life. What purpose could religion really serve if it has to pass the test of reason every time you need to muster righteous rage, speak truth to power, terrible truth to terrifying principalities and powers, bring your unchecked outrage to the street, to the city council, to everywhere, to every precinct, without pausing to evaluate what good it'll do, this marching, this protest, this uprising, this revolutionary love? Sometimes there's no time for that, and to wait would be a sin. What purpose could our religion really serve if it has to pass the test of reason every time you need to love someone, maybe who doesn't even deserve it? Maybe proof can't prove that they deserve it, but you're called to love them anyway. There's no space in that equation for scientific method, for the sterile exactitude of Enlightenment thought, which has bedazzled Unitarians since the 18th century. Sometimes, all the time, in fact, we're called to love humans at their most unlovable, to love and to forgive, starting with our own shabby and imperfect selves. That is a universalist commission, and there is not a drop of reason in it, not an ounce of logic. You could search all day for empirical evidence of your shining worth and dignity, your inherent beauty, not earned but stamped upon you. You could search your whole life long for evidence of that, and it might not add up, but it's true. What would be the purpose? What would be the point of a religion that said otherwise about you or anybody? It seems to me that Unitarian Universalism, if it offers us anything at all, says this to us: you are dignified and worthy. Everybody is. So act like it. The light that shines within you is primordial light, holy, powerful, beautiful. So act like it. Walk around as if this were true. Live your life, sing your songs, grieve your unspeakable sorrows, shout your gratitude unceasing, tremble, do your work, speak your truth, serve this world and one another, as if at any moment you might die, as if at some point you will die. Bless this world and love it fiercely, as if you have nothing to lose. You are dignified and worthy. Act like it. That, to me, is the doctrine of our faith. And sometimes I wonder if somehow we've strayed from the center, from the core of our tradition, even as it is evolving. I wonder sometimes if we've become too pragmatic, too practical, empirical, methodical, logical, evidence-based. What purpose could religion really serve if it has to pass the test of reason? Every time you need to dream, to cast in your mind a vision of the future that is rooted in the present, rooted in the past, and yet so radically different. A future so utterly transformed that we might not even recognize the ashes of our present world in the glory of the new one. What would be the point of a religion that did not allow us, compel us, to imagine transformation? At White Bear, our theme this month, chosen a year ago, is myth, the practice of telling our stories. And this seems like a good time, June 2020, to re-examine every myth we live within, every story, fairy tale, every lie, everything that seems like solid, immutable fact because we've lived with it so long. It feels like fact, and yet it's not. This is a good time, this troubled time we're in, to think about telling new stories, dreaming and living and breathing and walking around in new history, making it up as we go, and listening with holy, reverent attention, listening for the stories other people are telling, which may in fact carry more weight, more truth, more evidence than what we ourselves in our little world can imagine. What if Unitarian Universalists listened to the stories, the testimony of Black people, brown people, Native people, people of color, queer people, trans people, people on the margins, both within our congregations and beyond our walls, walls which don't actually exist right now anyway, except in our minds or our hearts? From James Baldwin, writer, essayist, brilliant change agent in the 20th century, most of us are about as eager to change as we were to be born, and we go through our changes in a similar state of shock. Any real change implies the breakup of the world as we've known it, the loss of all that gave us identity, the end of our safety. He was writing to Black people here, and at the same time separately to white people about white safety, knowing full well that Black safety did not anywhere exist, as it still does not. Any real change implies the breakup of the world, the white world, as we've always known it, the loss of all that gives us identity, the end of our safety. Any real change is going to be dangerous for white people because it might imply the breakup of the mythologies white people live in and love. And at such a moment, he said, not daring to imagine the future, one clings to what one knows or the things that one possesses. But it's only when we're able, without bitterness or self-pity or white fragility or petulance or violence, it's only when we're able to surrender a dream we've long cherished that we set ourselves free for higher dreaming. Baldwin went on, we must say yes to life and embrace it wherever it's found, and it's found in terrible places. For nothing is fixed forever and ever. It's not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down the rock. The sea rises and the light fails, and the moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Not everything that is faced can be changed, he said, that nothing can be changed until it is faced. What are we willing to face? What mythology, what pre-existing conditions and assumptions are we willing to lay down, to shatter, to renounce as old religion that no longer fits? We're always saying we're done with dogma, and yet we worship white supremacy as if it were the gospel truth. What can you bring yourself to imagine? And here's where logic leaves the room, and perhaps we are at last converted to a saving faith, a religion that likes reason very much, but loves imagination more, loves passion more, and heart and spirit and sacrifice and service to a larger love that transcends our understanding. 160 years ago, and earlier than that, long before the Civil War, but culminating then, Universalist and Unitarian congregations, like other sort of progressive Protestants, were sorely torn. The rupture between congregations, within a single church, and also inside individuals. The moral dilemma running right through the heart of some people, the rupture was a jagged gash. And though it came to crisis in the years leading to the Civil War and through the war itself, it didn't start in 1860 or 1850 or in the 1800s at all. The jagged gash between congregations and within them and inside the souls of some people, that was way older than that, dating at least to 1619, before the Unitarians or Universalists were even a thing. The rupture was old, but it came to crisis with the Civil War, and looking back from now, it's hard for us to believe maybe, or at least painful to know, that some of our congregations, some of our ministers, some of our people, many, were not abolitionists, not at all. The people were divided among and within themselves. Some didn't want to get involved. It was just too messy, too political. That's not a proper role for the church. Or they counseled patience, fired their ministers if they spoke too loudly or too much, spoke in measured tones to and about people who literally had chains around their necks, whose children were placed in child-sized shackles when they were led away. They counseled them to be more patient, more discreet in their resistance. We'll get there, they said. We just need to do it through the proper and orderly channels of government, the great false promise of democracy. Uprising and rebellion, burning other people's stuff, those are not good tactics. And there were some others in our pulpits and our pews, this is in the North now, who just flat out didn't believe black people were worth it, that they had all kinds of scientific evidence, theological evidence, the latest research to back all that up. There were still others, many others, who said, nope, this is a moral crisis, of course this matter can't wait, but they could not imagine. They chose not to try to imagine an America without slavery at its center, without slavery at the heart of its capitalist soul, the lifeblood, literally, of the American economy. They couldn't imagine abolition, never having lived in that United States. That country did not yet exist, and it felt like a fantasy, a mythological, idealistic dream, and failing to imagine abolition, they couldn't really imagine free black people either. And that failure of imagination haunts us still. I said it was a rupture, a jagged gash, and that's true. In Universalist and Unitarian congregations, as in others, there were also people, white people, maybe a majority, I don't know. And also, by the way, all along, black people in those pews also. There were people who fully imagined and fought for abolition, but it was not unanimous and it was not easy. And looking back, it's hard for us, it's painful to see how practical and logical, methodical and reasonable some of our people were. What will be the impact, they said, on commerce and international trade if the cotton industry and sugarcane are compromised? They were right to worry, and they were wrong to worry. It's painful now to hold our history entire, including the history of white Unitarian women, icons of equal rights, demanding women's suffrage, but when asked to put the freedom of black women first, or black people first, when asked in their day if black life mattered, they demurred because they could and said, we'll do that next. And then they didn't. What can we imagine now? The history of policing in America is a complicated story, but there is no doubt that part of the institution, the tradition, the mythological reality that we know as the police has its historic root in the need to serve and to protect with murderous efficiency a social order defined by and dependent upon slavery. The slave patrollers, with their badges, their guns,
their night watches, their authority, north and south. So much of what we're living now starts there. It takes a lot of weaponry and a lot of complicit silence behind that weaponry to defend what's morally indefensible. It takes an embedded army, protected and legitimized by conventional, rational, well-educated, liberal, white silence. Lots of our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors were abolitionists for sure, but some of them couldn't compel themselves to imagine the breakup of their world. Most of us are about as eager to change as we were to be born, says James Baldwin, and we go through our changes in a similar state of shock. Any real change implies the breakup of the world as we've always known it and the end of safety. Not everything that's faced can be changed, but nothing will change till it's faced, till it's imagined. We don't have to waste our time wondering what we would have done back then, because we live right now. Right now, you can read pages and pages, I hope you will, and scroll through screen after screen of brilliant posts, articles, essays, blogs, resources from MPD 150 and other organizations, coalitions, scholars on abolishing police, a new abolition movement addressing an old and dangerous construct. This outworn mythology. The UUA itself has a growing archive of resources, references, toolkits, all of them asking, in the recent words of writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, what would it mean to build the state around principles of nonviolence rather than reserving that exacting standard for those harmed by the state? What would abolition of the police even look like? And before you dismiss that question as ridiculous or irresponsible, remember, 150 years from now, people in our own churches may look back on us, if our churches even exist. They'll look back and shake their heads and they'll say, wow, those people in 2020, they were so smart, really practical and cautious, but they could not dream a dream to save their lives. What was even the point of their rational religion, that old Unitarian Universalism? They were right there in the midst of the great transformation that cracked the world right open, and they didn't even notice it. They must have been too comfortable, too scared to want to notice. They must have had too much to lose. Already we're hearing the University of Minnesota has severed ties with the Minneapolis Police Department. The Park Board, the Walker Art Museum, the Minneapolis School Board, and the Teachers Union voted to do the same. Every school district in the state could follow suit. People are asking, what can I do? And instead of bringing food to Minneapolis, or in addition, you could call your school board and demand that armed officers come out of the hallways once and for all. People are calling for the defunding of bloated law enforcement budgets that have resulted in a systematically anti-Black militarization of police departments nationwide. Late last week, chokeholds were banned finally in Minneapolis, and this is all directly down to the people in the street. We know that. Power doesn't just give way. The pressure's on and maybe working. Already we're hearing city councilors calling for the police department to be dismantled, taking their cue from people in the neighborhoods. They're talking again, and this time for real, about what it would look like to send county mental health professionals to mental health 911 calls instead of cops, and EMTs to opioid overdose calls instead of cops, and turning traffic enforcement over to unarmed teams that could do it just fine instead of cops. Already we're seeing people in communities caring for each other, protecting each other, taking over an entire hotel to house homeless people, meeting with their neighbors, setting up their own vigils and mutual aid, resolving together, pledging not to call the police, not ever. The UUA has posted guidelines for our churches, urging us to think hard about what circumstances now would compel us ever to call the police in an emergency, and offering wise alternative ways of being in relation with each other and our neighborhoods to keep everybody safe. Ways of being in relation with our principles, our imagination, ways to be in relation with our history and our future to keep everybody safe. This is not about your niece or nephew who all their life wanted to be a police officer and went to the academy, and now they're in uniform somewhere, and the family's so proud to have such a good, brave person on the force. It's not about that. It's not about the members of my own congregation who are retired cops themselves, who've in fact been talking about this with us for a long, long time because they've seen it. It is about generations of trauma and brutality, power and abuse of power, killing black bodies and others, but mostly black bodies, all the time in our name. It cannot stand. For many years, our congregation has hosted homeless families, mostly women and children from St. Paul, in a project run by the Council of Churches called Project Home. And one night last year in September, when guests from Project Home were here for a month, a neighbor called the police. It wasn't nighttime. It was daylight. It was well before 8 o'clock. The families, children and mothers were out on our playground with our volunteers, talking and laughing, and a neighbor called the cops because it was too loud. It was not too loud. They complained about a disturbance, but there was no disturbance. Somebody was uneasy for no apparent reason, and whoever it is didn't bother to call the church, didn't bother to walk over, didn't think twice. Maybe they didn't realize, or maybe they did, that to call a cop on a bunch of black women and kids in Matamidi, Minnesota, is an act of potentially lethal aggression and an ugly mistake. And even though the officer from Washington County handled it so well, and I believe reluctantly, it was an ugly mistake. We knew then that before Project Home could come back to our church, which would have been this coming September, before we could in conscience say, here is safe and welcome space for you and for your children, be at home, we would have to leaflet this whole neighborhood, call for community meetings, lay down the law of right relationship. And if it weren't for the pandemic, we'd be doing that right now. What would abolition look like? What would it feel like? And who gets to write that story? Who gets to spend all the money we'd save dismantling police? Who gets to redefine words like safety, security, peace, protect and serve? Who gets to frame the conditions of beloved community? And what purpose, really, does our religion actually serve if it has to pass the test of reason every time the cry for change is heard or the call for justice rises? Nothing is fixed forever and ever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing, said James Baldwin. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the light goes out. Spirit of life, may the light within us and among us, light shining all around us now, guide our steps toward a new day. Amen and amen. Friends, it was an honor to be with you today. As benediction, I offer you the words that we speak every Sunday at White Bear UU Church, the words of the Reverend Arthur Foote. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us. Amen. Stay strong. Stay well, everyone.